Park had been living on the spaceship for 6 months now. The ship was called Starward Dawn, and it belonged to the Galactic Union. Was the only human on board. The crew had 12 different alien species, and all of them were afraid of her. She did not blame them. She understood why they were scared. In the galaxy, humans had a terrible reputation. Every alien species had heard the stories. Humans came from Earth, a planet so dangerous that most species called it a death world. On Earth, the air could become poison. The ground could shake and swallow cities. Water fell from the sky, and sometimes it was acid. The sun could burn skin in minutes. Tiny creatures too small to see could kill in days. And humans had survived all of it. Not just survived. They had become the top predators of their entire planet. They had hunted animals bigger than themselves. They had chased prey for days without stopping, running until their targets collapsed from exhaustion. They had tamed wolves and made them into pets. They had conquered every environment on their world. The aliens looked at and saw a monster wearing a friendly face. Was not very tall for a human. She was 28 years old with black hair she kept tied back and warm brown eyes. She smiled often and laughed easily. She worked hard and never complained. She helped anyone who asked. None of this mattered to the crew. When walked down the corridors, other crew members pressed themselves against the walls. When she entered the dining hall, conversation stopped. When she spoke, people flinched at the sound of her voice. Her forward-facing eyes marked her as a predator. Her teeth, designed for tearing meat, made others uncomfortable when she smiled. At first, this had hurt feelings. She had tried so hard to be friendly. She had learned about every species on the ship. She had memorized their customs and their foods and their holidays. She had done everything right. But fear was stronger than kindness. So had stopped trying so hard. She did her job. She was polite. And when she needed peace, she went to the observation deck on level 7. The observation deck was a large room with a curved window that looked out into space. Right now, the ship was studying a nebula. The nebula was purple and pink and gold, with swirls of gas that stretched across thousands of light years. It was the most beautiful thing had ever seen. She had made the observation deck her secret place. She had changed the temperature controls to make it warm like summer on Earth. She had brought a soft blanket from her quarters. Sometimes she read books there. Sometimes she watched the nebula and thought about home. Sometimes she just slept. Humans needed a lot of sleep. This was something the other species found very strange. Most predator species slept lightly, always alert for danger. But humans slept deeply and for long hours. It was how their bodies healed and recovered. It was how their brains processed memories and emotions. Was a very heavy sleeper. Once she fell asleep, almost nothing could wake her. Today had been a long day. Worked as a navigation officer. The ship systems had developed a problem and she had spent 14 hours fixing it. Her eyes burned. Her muscles ached. Her brain felt like it was full of wet cotton. She went to the observation deck. She lay down on the padded bench by the window. She rolled up her jacket and put it under her head like a pillow. The nebula glowed softly outside, painting the room in gentle colors. Closed her eyes. Within minutes, she was deeply asleep. She did not hear the door open an hour later. She did not hear the soft padding of small feet on the floor. She did not hear the curious chirps and whispers. 3 small shapes crept into the room. They moved slowly, carefully. Their large eyes reflected the nebula's light. Their pointed ears twitched at every sound. Their fur was silver and soft, and their tails swished behind them. They were cubs, children of a predator species that was almost as feared as humans. They had cat-like bodies and faces, with sharp claws they could extend or hide. The oldest was 4 years old. The youngest was barely 2. Their names were Minyu and they were supposed to be in their room on level 4. They were supposed to be sleeping. But they were scared and lonely and their mother was sick and they had escaped to explore the ship. The observation deck had warm air coming through the vents. It smelled safe. And there on the bench was a large, warm creature making slow breathing sounds. The cubs did not know what a human was. They did not know about death worlds or predator classifications or the fear that followed everywhere she went. They only knew that this creature was warm and soft and breathing slowly like their mother did when she napped. Minyu, the oldest, was the bravest. He climbed up onto the bench first. He sniffed the strange creature. It smelled different from anything he knew, but not bad, not dangerous. It smelled like warmth and something sweet. He lay down against the creature's side. The creature did not wake. It made a small sound and shifted slightly, and one arm curled around him without waking. Minyu purred and watched their brother with wide eyes, then climbed up too. He found a spot on the creature's stomach. It was soft and warm, and it moved up and down with each breath. It was perfect. Little was the last. She was the smallest and the most scared, but her brothers looked so comfortable, and she was so tired and so cold, and she missed her mother so much. She climbed up onto the creature's chest. She crawled up toward the neck, where the skin was warmest. She pressed her tiny face against the soft spot under the creature's chin. The creature made a humming sound. Its other arm came up and wrapped around all three cubs, holding them close and safe. The cubs purred together. The sound filled the room like music. Outside the window, the nebula glowed. Inside the room, a human and three alien children slept together, breathing in the same rhythm, warm and peaceful, and completely unaware that they were doing something the galaxy thought was impossible. Slept on. She did not know that her life was about to change forever. She did not know that three small hearts had already decided she belonged to them. She just slept and held them close and dreamed of nothing at all. Commander was having the worst day of his life. He stood in the middle of the guest quarters on level 4, staring at an empty room. The beds were empty. The toys were scattered on the floor. The door was open. The cubs were gone. Was of the same species as the missing children. He was tall and strong, with dark silver fur and sharp golden eyes. He had served in the Galactic Union military for 15 years. He had fought in battles. He had faced enemies that would make most species run in terror. But right now, his hands were shaking. The cubs were his sister's children. His sister had fallen sick with nebula fever 3 days ago. It was a dangerous illness that needed special medicine. The nearest medical station was 2 weeks away. Had agreed to take the cubs on his ship while traveled to get treatment. He had promised to keep them safe. And now they were missing on a ship with a human. Ran to the nearest computer panel on the wall. His claws clicked against the screen as he typed. "Computer," he said, his voice was rough with fear. "Find the 3 young on this ship. Tell me where they are." The computer beeped. 3 young are on level 7. They are in the observation deck. Felt his blood turn to ice. Level 7. The observation deck. That was where the human liked to spend her time. Everyone on the ship knew this. Everyone stayed away from level 7 because of it. And his sister's cubs had walked right into the predator's den. Started running. His mind raced as fast as his feet. He thought about everything he knew about humans. They were persistent predators. They could chase prey for days without rest. They had binocular vision that could track movement from far away. They had hands that could grip and hold and never let go. But the worst thing about humans was something called pack bonding. Humans could form emotional connections with almost anything. They kept animals in their homes and treated them like family. They talked to plants. They named their vehicles and felt sad when those vehicles broke down. They could look at any creature, no matter how strange or dangerous, and decide that creature was now their friend. This sounded nice. It was not nice. When a human bonded with something, they became protective of it. Dangerously protective. There were stories of humans fighting much larger predators to save their pets. Stories of humans running into burning buildings to rescue animals. Stories of humans traveling across entire planets to find lost companions. A human who had bonded with something would do anything to keep it safe. They would fight. They would kill. They would die. What would happen if the human saw the cubs as threats? What would happen if she woke up and attacked? Cubs were strong for their age, but they were still children. They could not fight a human. But what if something worse happened? What if the human decided to keep them? Ran faster. He passed other crew members in the corridors. They saw the fear on his face and pressed against the walls. A few called out questions, but he did not stop to answer. He reached level 7. He ran down the corridor toward the observation deck. The door was closed. Stopped in front of it. He tried to catch his breath. He tried to prepare himself for what he might find inside. Maybe the cubs were fine. Maybe they were just hiding in a corner, scared but safe. Maybe the human was not even there. He opened the door. The first thing he saw was the human lying on the bench by the window. The nebula's light painted her face in soft colors. Her eyes were closed. She was breathing slowly and deeply, clearly asleep. The second thing he saw made him freeze completely. The cubs were on top of her. Minyu was pressed against her side, his small claws hooked into her sleeve, was curled up on her stomach, rising and falling with each of her breaths. And Tiny was on her chest, her face buried in the curve of the human's neck. They were all asleep. They were all purring. The human's arms were wrapped around them. She held them close like they were precious things, like they were her own children, like she would never let them go. Could not move. He could not think. He could not understand what he was seeing. His communicator buzzed. He looked down at it with numb fingers. It was a message from Doctor, the ship's doctor. She must have been monitoring the cubs' health signals. "Commander," her message said, "I am seeing something very strange. The cubs' stress levels have dropped to 0. Their heart rates have slowed to match the human's heart rate. Their brain waves show deep, peaceful sleep. I have never seen readings like this. They are acting like the human is their mother." Read the message 3 times. It still did not make sense. Cubs only bonded like this with their own family. They were naturally suspicious of strangers. It took months for them to trust anyone new. Sometimes it took years. But these cubs had known the human for less than an hour. They had climbed onto her body while she slept. They had decided in that short time that she was safe, that she was warm, that she was theirs. Looked at the sleeping pile of human and cubs. He did not know what to do. He did not know if he should wake them or let them sleep. He did not know if this was dangerous or beautiful or both. He just stood there, watching, as the nebula glowed outside and 3 small cubs purred against the chest of the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. The news spread through the ship like fire. Had called Doctor to the observation deck. Doctor had called the captain. The captain had told his first officer. The first officer had told everyone else. Within 1 hour, half the crew knew. Within 2 hours, everyone knew. The human had been found sleeping with predator cubs on top of her. Crew members found excuses to walk past level 7. They peeked through the observation deck window. They whispered to each other in the corridors. Nobody could believe what they were seeing. Doctor was a species that looked like a mix between a bird and a lizard. She had bright blue feathers and sharp, clever eyes. She was the best doctor on the ship, and she had never seen anything like this. She stood next to, watching the sleeping group. Her medical scanner hummed softly as it collected data. "This should not be possible," she said quietly. "Cubs have very strong instincts. They know the difference between safe creatures and dangerous creatures. They should have recognized the human as a threat." "But they did not," said. His voice was tired. He had been standing here for almost an hour, too afraid to move. "No, they did not." Doctor looked at her scanner. "Look at these readings. The cubs' bodies have completely relaxed. Their immune systems are stronger. Their brain activity shows they are having good dreams. Being near the human is actually making them healthier. Shook his head. That makes no sense. I know, but the data does not lie. Doctor put her scanner away. I have a theory. Do you want to hear it? Yes. Humans are predators. This is true, but they are a special kind of predator. They did not evolve alone. They evolved alongside other creatures. They formed bonds with wolves and horses and birds. They learned to work together with other species. They learned to protect the creatures they bonded with. Doctor pointed at the sleeping human. I think the cubs can sense this. I think they can feel that the human is not just a predator. She is also a protector, and their instincts are telling them that she will keep them safe. Thought about this. He thought about his sister's cubs, small and scared and far from home. He thought about how much they must miss their mother. Maybe they had not made a mistake. Maybe they had found exactly what they needed. What do we do now? He asked. We wait, Doctor said. We let them sleep, and when the human wakes up, we see what happens. They did not have to wait long. About 30 minutes later began to wake up. It was a slow process, like watching someone swim up from deep water. Her breathing changed first. Then her fingers twitched. Then her face moved, her eyebrows pulling together slightly. Held his breath. Opened her eyes. For a moment she looked confused. She blinked at the ceiling. She clearly did not remember where she was or how she had gotten there. Then she felt the weight on her chest and stomach and sighed. She looked down. 3 pairs of golden eyes looked back at her. Nobody moved. The cubs stared at the human stared at the cubs, and Doctor stared at all of them. The silence stretched out like a rubber band about to snap. Then the smallest cub little made a sound. It was a tiny chirp, high and sweet, like a question. She reached up with one small paw and touched the human's chin. His face changed. It was hard to describe what happened. Her eyes became soft. Her mouth curved into a gentle smile. Her whole body seemed to relax, even though she had just woken up. She looked at the small cub with an expression that recognized instantly. It was the same way his sister looked at her children. Well, hello there, said softly. Her voice was warm and gentle, not much louder than a whisper. Where did you come from, little one? Chirped again. She pushed her face against hand. Laughed. It was a quiet laugh, careful not to disturb the other cubs. She stroked his head with one finger, scratching gently behind her ears. Oh, you like that, murmured. You're just a baby, aren't you? Just a tiny little baby. Me knew and were awake now too. They watched the human pet their sister. They did not seem scared. They seemed curious. Made a demanding sound and pushed his head against other hand. You want some attention too, smiled Wider. She had both hands moving now, petting 2 cubs at once. Don't worry, there's enough for everyone. I've got 2 hands. Minu, not wanting to be left out, crawled up higher and bumped his head against his shoulder. Laughed again. Okay, 3 cubs, 2 hands, we'll figure something out. Watched this with wide eyes. The human was not scared. She was not confused. She was acting like this was completely normal, like she woke up covered in alien children every day. He stepped forward. His foot made a sound on the floor. Looked up. She saw standing in the doorway. She saw Doctor behind him with her scanner. She saw the fear and confusion on their faces. She did not stop petting the cubs. Commander, she said calmly, I seem to have collected some small creatures. Are these yours? Opened his mouth. No words came out. They're my sister's children, he finally managed to say. They were supposed to be in their room. They escaped. I came to find them and... He trailed off. He did not know how to finish the sentence. Nodded slowly. She looked down at the cubs, then back up at. Their mother is the one who's sick, with nebula fever. Yes, she is getting treatment. I am taking care of them until she returns. They must be scared, said softly. Being away from their mother, being on a strange ship with strange people. She looked at who had fallen asleep again against her neck. The cub was purring so loudly that could feel it in her chest. They just wanted somewhere safe, said. Somewhere warm, I understand that. Did not know what to say. He had expected anger or fear or confusion. He had not expected understanding. Doctor stepped forward. Lieutenant Park, are you not disturbed by this? They climbed on you while you were sleeping. They are predator cubs with claws and teeth. Shrugged carefully, trying not to wake. On Earth we have a saying, let sleeping dogs lie, but we also have another tradition. When something small and warm falls asleep on you, you are not allowed to move until they wake up. It's the law. That is not actually a law, Doctor said. It should be, replied. She smiled at the cubs. Besides, look at them. They're not scary, they're just kids. Felt something shift in his chest. For 6 months he had looked at the human and seen a monster. Everyone on the ship had. They had kept their distance. They had whispered warnings. They had treated her like a danger that might explode at any moment. But the human did not look like a monster now. She looked like someone who had just been given a gift and did not want to let it go. Lieutenant Park said slowly, thank you for being kind to them. Looked at him. Her eyes were serious now. Commander, I would never hurt a child, any child, no matter what species they are. That's not who I am. She looked back down at the cubs. Minyu had fallen asleep again, pressed against her side, was still awake, watching her with curious eyes. I know everyone on this ship is afraid of me, said quietly. I know what humans look like to the rest of the galaxy, but we're not just predators. We're also, I don't know how to explain it, we're also the species that adopts everything. We see something small and helpless and our first instinct is to protect it. She stroked fur gently. The cub closed his eyes and purred. These kids found me when they were scared and alone. They decided I was safe. That means something to me. That means everything to me. Looked at the human holding his sister's children. He thought about all the stories he had heard about humans. The scary ones, about their strength and endurance and hunting skills. But also the other ones, about their loyalty and love and willingness to die for the creatures they cared about. Maybe both kinds of stories were true. Maybe that was what made humans so terrifying and so wonderful at the same time. 3 days passed. In those 3 days, everything on the Starward Dawn changed. It started small, tried to take the cubs back to their room after woke up. He thanked the human politely. He picked up Minyu and he let ride on his shoulder. He walked toward the door. The cubs started screaming. It was not a normal cry. It was a sound of pure terror and heartbreak. Minyu fought against grip. His claws came out. Little made a wailing noise that hurt everyone's ears. They reached toward with desperate paws. They called out in their baby language. They acted like they were being taken from their mother. Stood up from the bench. Her face was pale. Commander, wait, something's wrong. They're fine, said, but his voice shook. The cubs had never acted like this before. They just need to go back to their room. They don't want to go, stepped closer. Look at them, they're terrified. Looked at the cubs in his arms. Minyu had stopped fighting. He was crying now, real tears running down his furry face. Was shaking. Had buried her face in his neck, but she kept making that terrible wailing sound. Doctor checked her scanner. Her feathers were flat against her head, a sign of distress. Commander, their stress hormones are very high. Their heart rates are dangerous. If this continues, they could make themselves sick. Did not know what to do. He could not force the cubs to calm down. He could not explain to them that the human was not their mother. They were too young to understand. Let me try something, said. She walked over slowly. She held out her arms. She did not try to take the cubs from, she just stood there offering. The cubs' crying changed immediately. It became hopeful instead of desperate. They reached for her with all their strength. Made a decision. He handed the cubs to the human. The crying stopped instantly. Minyu wrapped himself around his left arm. pressed against her right side, climbed up to her favorite spot on his chest. Within seconds, all 3 cubs were purring again. "I don't understand," said. His voice was hollow. "They barely know you. Why are they acting like this?" Held the cubs carefully. She looked as confused as felt. "I don't know. Maybe it's because I was the first warm thing they found when they were scared. Some Earth animals do this. It's called imprinting. They attach to whatever they see first." Doctor nodded slowly. "That would explain the brain patterns I've been seeing. Their minds have formed a very strong connection to you. Breaking that connection would cause them serious psychological harm." "What does that mean?" asked. "What do we do?" "For now," Doctor put away her scanner, "we let the cubs stay with Lieutenant Park. We don't try to separate them. When their mother arrives, she may be able to help them transfer the bond back to her. But until then, forcing them apart would be cruel." "Looked at is this acceptable to you, taking care of 3 children who are not your species?" Looked down at the cubs. They had all fallen asleep again, exhausted from their crying. Their small bodies were warm against her skin. Their purring made her chest vibrate. She thought about her life on this ship. 6 months of loneliness. 6 months of being feared and avoided. 6 months of going to sleep alone and waking up alone. And now she had 3 small creatures who wanted nothing more than to be near her. "Yes," she said quietly, "this is acceptable." And so became a temporary mother. It was not easy. The cubs needed to eat every few hours. They needed to be cleaned and groomed. They needed attention and play and comfort. Had to learn everything quickly. She asked Doctor about nutrition. She asked about customs. She read every file she could find about raising young. But the hard parts were balanced by the good parts. The cubs followed her everywhere. When she went to work on the navigation systems, they sat near her feet and played with toys. When she went to the dining hall, they sat on the bench next to her and ate from small bowls. When she went asleep, they piled on top of her like they had that first night. The crew watched all of this with amazement. They had never seen a human like this. They had expected the scary predator from the stories. Instead, they saw a woman who made funny faces to make the cubs laugh. They saw a woman who sang soft songs when the cubs were sad. They saw a woman who let ride on her shoulders through the corridors, the small cub's tail waving happily. People started talking too. It began with simple things. A crew member asking how the cubs were doing. Another crew member offering to share some food that the cubs might like. Small conversations, short and careful but real. Was surprised at first, then she was grateful, then she was hopeful. One evening, she was sitting in the dining hall with the cubs. Minyu was practicing his climbing skills on her arm, was eating something that looked like purple pudding, was asleep in his lap. A crew member approached. It was a named, one of Doctor's assistants. He had always avoided before. Now he stood near her table, looking nervous but determined. "Lieutenant Park," he said, "may I sit with you?" Blinked in surprise. "Of course." Sat down across from her. He watched Minyu climb for a moment. Then he said, "I wanted to apologize." "For what?" "For being afraid of you." Feathers ruffled with embarrassment. "I believed all the stories about humans. I thought you were dangerous. I never tried to know you as a person." Felt something warm spread through her chest. "I understand. Humans have a scary reputation. I don't blame you for being cautious." But I was wrong. Looked at the sleeping cub in her lap. A truly dangerous creature would not be so gentle with children. A monster would not sit here, covered in baby fur, looking happier than I have ever seen anyone look. Laughed softly. She looked down at. The cub was dreaming, her small paws twitching. "I am happy," admitted. "For the first time since I came to this ship, I feel like I belong somewhere, like I have a purpose." Nodded. "I think the cubs feel the same way. They are lucky to have found you." "No," said. She stroked his fur gently. "I'm the lucky one." That night went to the observation deck with all three cubs. She lay down on the bench where everything had started. The cubs arranged themselves in their favorite positions, Minu at her side, on her stomach, on her chest. The nebula glowed outside the window. The cubs purred against her body, closed her eyes and smiled. She was not alone anymore. She had a family now. A strange family, a temporary family, but a family nonetheless. For the first time in 6 months, fell asleep without feeling lonely. She dreamed of Earth, of sunlight and green grass and the sound of children laughing. In her dream, the children had fur and tails and golden eyes. In her dream, she held them close and promised to keep them safe forever. When she woke up, the cubs were still there, warm and purring and real, and knew that some promises were meant to be kept. 2 weeks later, the ship arrived at the medical station. Was waiting for them. She stood on the docking platform, her silver fur shining under the station's lights. She was thinner than before and there were tired lines around her eyes, but she was alive. She was healthy. The nebula fever was gone. Was the first off the ship. He ran to his sister and held her tight. They spoke in their native language, too fast and too quiet for anyone else to hear. When they finally separated, both of them had tears in their eyes. Then looked past her brother. She looked toward the ship's door. Walked out slowly. She carried against her chest. Minu held her left hand, held her right hand. They walked together like they had been doing it for years. His breath caught in her throat. Her children looked different. They looked healthy and happy and calm. They did not look like cubs who had been separated from their mother for 2 weeks. They looked like cubs who had been loved every single day. And they were holding onto a human like she was the most precious thing in the universe. Minu saw his mother first. His ears went up. His eyes went wide. He let go of his hand and ran forward. "Mama," he shouted. "Mama, mama, mama." Followed right behind him. Woke up at the noise, saw her mother, and started wiggling in his arms. Knelt down and let go. The small cub ran as fast as her little legs could carry her. Dropped to her knees and caught all three of her children at once. She held them so tight that they squeaked. She buried her face in their fur. She made sounds that were not words, just pure emotion. The cubs climbed all over her. They purred and chirped and tried to tell her everything that had happened. Their voices overlapped. Their tails waved. They were so happy that they could not contain it. Stood back and watched. She felt happy and sad at the same time. Happy because the family was together again. Sad because she knew what came next. The cubs did not need her anymore. They had their real mother back. Looked up, her eyes met across the docking platform. She saw the human standing alone, arms empty, face carefully neutral. She saw the goodbye that was preparing herself to say. Stood up, she walked toward the human, her children following behind her. She stopped in front of and studied her face for a long moment. "You are Lieutenant Park," said, "the human who took care of my children." "Yes," said. Her voice was steady, but something in her eyes was breaking. "They're wonderful kids. You should be very proud of them. My brother told me what happened. He told me they found you sleeping and climbed on top of you. He told me they bonded with you so strongly that they cried when you were apart." Nodded. She did not trust herself to speak. "He told me that you carried them everywhere, that you learned our customs so you could raise them properly, that you sang to them and played with them and held them when they were scared." His voice trembled slightly. "He told me that you loved them like they were your own." "I did," whispered. "I do." Reached out and took his hand. Her fur was soft and warm. Her grip was gentle but firm. "Then why are you standing so far away?" asked. "Why do you look like you are about to leave?" Was confused. "Because they're your children. You're here now. They don't need me anymore." Laughed. It was a warm sound, full of kindness and understanding. "Lieutenant Park, do you know what happens when a cub bonds with someone?" Shook her head. "The bond does not break, ever. looked down at her children who were pressed against her legs but also reaching toward. My children did not replace me with you. They added you to their family. In their hearts, they now have two mothers. Felt her eyes fill with tears. What? It is rare. It almost never happens with other species, but my children chose you. They claimed you as their own. Squeezed hand. In our culture, that makes you family, not temporary family, real family, forever family. Could not speak. The tears were falling down her face now. She did not try to stop them. Little tugged on pants. When looked down, the cub raised her arms in the universal gesture of children everywhere. Pick me up, hold me, I missed you. Picked her up. She held the small cub against her chest, in the same spot where it had slept for 2 weeks. The cub purred and pressed her face into his neck. Mama, said clearly. They were the first words she had ever spoken. Started crying harder. She could not help it. She had spent 6 months being feared and avoided. She had spent her whole life on this ship feeling like an outsider, and now a tiny alien child was calling her mother. Mean you and pressed against her legs. They were purring too. Watched all of this with a soft smile. Then she looked around at the crew members who had followed off the ship. They were all watching too. Their faces showed surprise and wonder and something that looked like hope. Doctor stepped forward. In all my years of medicine, I have never seen anything like this. A human forming a family bond with children. It should be impossible. Clearly it is not impossible, said. Clearly we have been wrong about many things. She looked at again. The human was surrounded by cubs now. She was crying and laughing at the same time. She looked overwhelmed and terrified and happier than anyone had ever seen her. The galaxy tells stories about humans, said. Her voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. We tell our children to fear them. We say they are predators, monsters, dangerous creatures from a death world. She walked closer too and put a hand on her shoulder. But look at this human. Look at what she did for my children. She did not hurt them. She did not scare them. She held them when they were afraid. She fed them when they were hungry. She loved them when they needed love. Looked at the watching crew members. Maybe we have been looking at humans wrong. Maybe they are not just predators. Maybe they are also protectors. Maybe their greatest instinct is not to hunt, but to care for those who are smaller and weaker and in need. The crew was silent. They were thinking about the past 2 weeks. They were thinking about playing with the cubs in the corridors, about singing lullabies in the observation deck, about learning everything she could about culture just so she could be a better caretaker. They were thinking about the fear they had felt, and how foolish that fear seemed now. Stepped forward. He stood next to and the cubs. He put a hand on Minu's head. Lieutenant Park is family now, he said firmly. Anyone who threatens her threatens us. Anyone who fears her has not been paying attention. One by one, the crew members nodded. Some of them smiled. A few of them actually stepped closer, like they wanted to be part of this strange new family. Looked around at all of them. She looked at the cubs pressed against her body. She looked at its kind face and its protective stance. She looked at the stars shining outside the station windows, at the vast galaxy that had always seemed so cold and lonely. It did not seem lonely anymore. Thank you, she said quietly. All of you, thank you for giving me a chance. Little patted her face with a soft paw. Mama no cry, Mama happy now. Laughed through her tears. She held the cub closer and closed her eyes. Yes, she whispered, Mama is very happy now. And far away, across the light years, the nebula they had studied together still glowed in the darkness. It was purple and pink and gold, swirling with colors that had taken millions of years to form. Some beautiful things took time. Some families were not born but made. Some bonds were stronger than fear, stronger than distance, stronger than all the old stories that said they should not exist. In the end, it had started so simply. A tired human, a warm bench, 3 scared children looking for safety. They had found each other in the dark, and they would never be alone again.